Oh, my modal key binding warriors. I just wanted to talk to you real quick today about why I use Helix bindings. So, going back in time, back in 2010, I was doing a lot of coding during a summer break with a friend, and he told me I should learn Vim. At the time, I was using Pico or Nano, and he said, learn Vim, you'll be fast, and that'll make you a good engineer. And I fucking hated it. I couldn't get anything done. I had the man pages open while I was trying to code. The interface was confusing. There's nothing to help me get through it, and the bindings were not intuitive whatsoever. Like why do you use zero and dollar sign and caret to move the cursor around? That doesn't make any sense at all. Like HJKL, I can get behind that, but the rest of it just like made no sense to me whatsoever. And I just kind of gave up. I ended up going into mechanical engineering instead, maybe partly because of that. That's a topic for another day. But then we fast forward to last year. I was watching the Primeagen, and he brought, as far as I can tell, he brought Vim bindings back to the forefront for engineers in 2022, 23, 24. And I was like, you know what? Like, I get why people use these things. Like, modal editors, people who are fast in modal editors are like crazy fast. And I really like the idea of being able to just sit down, fingers on the home row, and just be able to get some work done. So I opened up NeoVim and I tried it again. I had the same experience. I had the man pages open while I was trying to learn the thing. I did Vim Adventures. I got the basics, but they never really clicked. They were always just kind of like there at the surface level. And then I'd, take 2 days off for a weekend. Then I'd come back and I'd have to relearn everything. And it just, no matter what I did, it just didn't stick. So then actually, interestingly enough, I asked the Primeagen if he had any suggestions for alternative key bindings, and he suggested Helix to me. That's a little bit of a tidbit about in my history here. And so I went and checked it out, and immediately I found an application that was very easy to install. As soon as you open it up, it had all the little UX breadcrumbs to kind of get you to where you needed to go, kind of like the video game style, install the thing, open it up, and then become an expert in like a couple hours, just based on like how the thing is set up, as opposed to you like reading a man page. And I found the key bindings to be very easy to understand. Like you got HJKL, and then you can modify those like GH and GL in order to like skip to one side or skip to the other side. So everything felt very symmetric. And then I realized that they had language server protocol commands as like a first class citizen, and also surround commands as a first class citizen in the core key bindings. And then on top of that, it had basically every single language server protocol integrated that I use. It had Dart, which I was like amazed because Dart's not like a super popular language. I looked at the list and had all the other ones: TypeScript, Python, C, C++, like list just goes on and on and on. Rust, obviously. And so I was just like, this is great. This is like the easiest way for me to try a lightweight modal editor quite quickly. And so that's essentially what I did. And the way I would say it now is, I don't fly like Harry Potter. I might fly a little bit more like Cedric Diggory, but that's fine with me because he got the girl. He did die a horrible death before clearing the funnel, but yeah, I mean, I think it works pretty good. The way I describe it to other people now when they're trying to figure out if they want to use Vim or Helix is you give up 20% of the speed at the top end for 90% faster learning and better retention. And I say at the top end, but the curves I think are a little bit different. So with NeoVim, I think your speed curve is like basically nothing, and then you get to expert mode and you shoot up. With Helix, I think your speed curve goes more like this. And so you get to speed faster, but then it tops out. And then Vim, you're kind of like stuck in Vim hell for a while, and then it just kind of kicks up. So it's choose your own adventure as to which way you want to go. But I do want to talk about the future a little bit. So one thing I would love to see is I would love Helix to offer a headless mode so that we could integrate the core bindings into things like VS Code, Xcode, and especially Zed. Because one thing that Vim does really, really well, beyond just giving you like that top level speed when you're at the top of your game, is there's Vim flavored stuff available in everything. Now, the good news is that Helix is also Vim flavored, but I would just say that it's like 60% Vim flavored, whereas things like the built-in Xcode Vim key bindings are like 95% Vim flavored. They just don't have all of the things that like a modern Vim setup does with surround. Xcode might have surround, but not all of them have things like surround. And that just brings us to the last point, which is that when people say that they're using Vim bindings, like you never actually know what that means because every single person's dot file setup for Vim is so completely different that two people's Vim key binding setups essentially don't look like each other, which I always find this is really interesting because people always ask me for my dot files for Helix. My dot files for Helix is like basically the theme and like an escape key binding so that when I hit escape, it like cancels the cursor and puts me into normal mode at the same time. And that's about it. So that's why I use Helix key bindings. And I'm really hoping that we can see more integration, especially into Zed. Like I'm super excited about Zed, but it's got the Vim bindings and I don't see anything for Helix bindings yet. And I really think that Helix bindings would really make Zed shine. And it's kind of a bummer that they haven't taken that on, although I'm sure they have bigger fish to fry. So if you have any thoughts on this, go ahead and put them in the comments below and really appreciate you sticking around.